Hello everybody! Happy New Year 2019! For my first video of 2019, I think it's appropriate I review this sci-fi movie. I should because it's a sci-fi movie that came out in 1982 and it takes place this year in 2019. I'm so happy to talk about it, so let's get to it. Now wait, if it's 2019, are owls now artificial?
Do you like our owl?
You know, since the year is 2019, I think it's best if I make a New Year's resolution for you guys. Number one, I gotta be lookout for the replicants, and number two, I have to question their memories if their memories are theirs. And if you already took out those two clues of what I just talked about, you know that I'm gonna review the original 1982 movie, Blade Runner.
Is this testing whether I'm a replicant?
Why, yes, Rachel, we're testing you if you are a replicant because the year is 2019. Just kidding, I'm just reviewing the movie Blade Runner. Blade Runner is a 1982 sci-fi film directed by Ridley Scott, and it's based off of Philip K. Dick's novel, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? And it stars Harrison Ford, Sean Young, Roy Batty, and it tells the tale of a LAPD cop in the future named Rick Deckard. He's in Los Angeles in November of 2019, and his job is to hunt replicants and to retire them from the Tyrell Corporation. But one day, Deckard goes to a trip to the Tyrell Corporation of where they make these replicants, and he tries to investigate about what they do to these type of artificial intelligent robots. And he just so happens to meet this replicant named Rachel, and they build some type of relationship, and they begin to discover a lot of things about each other between humanity and the replicants. As the film investigates even more into the plot, into the story, Deckard begins to unfold more mysteries about replicants and who they really are. But also what this film does is that it builds some type of question for film viewers even 37 years later about, is Deckard even a replicant? There are hints of the film where he kind of is, but it doesn't really tell you. But it's one of the biggest mysteries that cinema has given to us, and I know it's a little off that I'm talking about it right now, and it's something I somewhat consider a spoiler, but it's not a major spoiler, but it's just a little thought that people can probably think about as they watch the movie. Reviewing Blade Runner for me is pretty tricky because this movie has been remade a few times because there is the original cut of 1982, there is a director's cut by Ridley Scott, and what I'm holding over here is the 2007 final edition, or the final cut of the movie. And basically from what I've seen from all three cuts, I'm basically just reviewing the movie of how it is, not necessarily of like, okay, I'm only reviewing the final cut, but I believe each cut does kind of have a lot of similar features, and it just has some similar features. There are some things that they take out from, you know, the original cut all the way to the director's cut and then to the final cut. And then these cuts are things that people can get conflicted by as they watch it. But what I can say about all of these cuts, they still resemble the film of Blade Runner, and my goodness, Blade Runner is one of the most beautifully directed films I have ever seen crafted onto cinema. Ridley Scott made this tricky masterpiece that has been existing for 37 years, and it's going to go even more because of this future that we're living in right now and what they tried to pursue or to try to predict for this day and age. And I have to say, although Blade Runner's technology is kind of 1980s-ish, you can see that the film does feel very modern in a sense of way. What makes Blade Runner memorable are its cinematography, its sets, and its visuals, because this is a movie that was way ahead of its time back in 1982. When you watch this movie, you actually do not feel like you're watching an 80s movie. You feel like this movie actually came out in 25 years later in 2007, or even today in 2019. That's how special Blade Runner is, because when Ridley Scott directed this movie, you know how he's very well known for being in the camera and creating amazing sets that feel very grounded and dirty and realistic. You just feel as if you're really sucked into the environment of Los Angeles, November 2019 in this movie. A great example would be a few scenes that I really would like to share with y'all of this movie. These are footage that I find just so engaging, especially when you listen to the music by Vangelis. Scene scene I showed you over there, it shows you how Blade Runner is a movie that knows how to use its music to overlap with its visuals. Now, the score by Vangelis is just very momentous. Every time I hear it, it's just wonderfully stuck into my head. It's so godlike and it's so heavenly, and it knows how to build tension at the right time. Because you can start off, like, for an example, with a scene that just starts off on the ground, but when it goes up to high in the skies, the music just builds and builds more momentum every time the scene progresses. And due to that, I am willing to show y'all another clip which uses that type of example I just shared with y'all. Another pro I can find with this movie is the acting, because the acting is just phenomenal. When you look at Harrison Ford, Sean Young, and Roy Batty, and all these other roles that are casted into this movie, you forget that they are actually actors. They really sink and disappear into these characters, and you feel as if you're really watching a futuristic event happen in humanity. And it's just really awesome the way how Scott directed these actors. Just from the way that these scenes with actors that are trying to have a conversation with each other, it's directed super well. You can have a scene where Harrison Ford just sits down, with a replicant, and they're looking at each other, but the way that they make their facial expressions and the way how their eyes maybe change, maybe giving you a hint that they may be a replicant, you just feel that type of expression that is very, reflected about what this movie is trying to pursue, and especially with the way that the actors' emotions are inhibited. Now, despite all the great things I talked about Blade Runner, I'm going to talk about the flaws, but this flaw is special, because this is what makes Blade Runner special, because despite this movie being absolutely perfect in its visuals and its cinematography, the flaw revolves around the storytelling and the writing. Blade Runner storytelling does take a while to really appreciate as a film viewer, because this is a movie that requires multiple viewings. Because this is a movie where if you watch it for the first time, there are some things that you might miss out on. Not just because the film is complex, it's also because there are some scenes that feel that they drag the pacing a bit. There is a subplot in the film, which I will not spoil, which I found a little unnecessary, but at the same time, when you watch it over and over again, it does give a greater meaning about what this film is trying to talk about between these few characters. But at the same time, when you just rewatch it, you can just kind of forgive it. And like I said in the beginning of this video, it's really difficult because this movie had 3 cuts. But once you watch this movie multiple times, you begin to discover new things that you miss out from your first viewing all the way to your second and your third. And that's one of the most fascinating things I love about Blade Runner, is that it's that mysterious in its own way. Now, after several viewings of Blade Runner, I can say that probably the main purpose of this film is questioning your own existence. Because if you think about it when you watch this film, you realize that there are replicants that are these robots that are artificially made by people. And then they have these memories that they think that are theirs, but maybe it's theirs or probably not theirs, or they borrowed it from someone. But honestly, that's what makes Blade Runner very philosophical, because it really gets your mind thinking about how are we made in this world? I mean, why do we exist in this life? Because that's what this film is trying to pursue and trying to get audiences to question, especially how the title of its own book is called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep by Philip K. Dick. And as I watch this movie, it does really reflect about what does society think about themselves as well. I mean, are we really made the way how we're supposed to be? I mean, why do we have this type of personality? Why are we made this way, for this place in this world? Why do we exist in this lifetime, this generation? And these are questions that build and build as you watch more of the film, and these are the questions that even the characters ask about this film. There's even a monologue recited by this replicant at the end of the film that talks about, it's called Tears and Rain, and it's something that really does question about who you really are and what do you really think about in your own mind with the body that you are residing in.
All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain.
Despite those little nitpicks about the flaws of the storytelling and some of its pacing issues between the cuts, Blade Runner is still a movie that people need to see because this is a movie that has impacted pop culture and cinema forever since 1982. And I believe it's also a great film to watch, you know, especially today, January 1st, 2019, because of how this movie takes place in 2019. And because of that, Blade Runner is impactful and awesome, and I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. And guys, thank you so much for watching. This was a pretty stressful video to make because I had to refilm myself several times to get my points clear about Blade Runner. But I'm very glad that this is a great New Year's video, and thank you very much, and still, Happy New Year to everybody. Thank y'all.